You believe your words belong to you. You think what leaves your lips vanishes, that it dissolves into the air, is forgotten by tomorrow, means nothing by next week. This is the most expensive illusion you have ever accepted. Because the people around you remember everything. Every sentence. Every admission. Every careless moment of honesty. They store it, file it, and wait. Right now, not in some distant future, not in some hypothetical scenario. Right now, somewhere in your life, there is a person sitting with information you gave them freely. Words you spoke in frustration. Confidences you shared in warmth. Secrets you handed over in moments of misplaced trust. And they are deciding what to do with all of it. You do not need a single enemy on this earth to be destroyed. You only need a mouth that moves faster than your mind. History is littered with brilliant people brought down not by superior rivals, not by bad luck, not by forces beyond their control, but by their own unguarded words spoken in the wrong room at the wrong moment to the wrong person. That empire that collapsed? Someone talked too much. That career that shattered overnight? Someone explained themselves when silence would have saved them. That relationship that ended in ruin and exposure? Someone could not resist confessing what should have stayed locked inside. The ancient world understood something modern life has aggressively forgotten: the most lethal enemy you will ever face is not outside you. It lives behind your teeth. Machiavelli spent his lifetime dissecting the mechanics of power, studying how kingdoms were built, how rulers fell, how the strong became weak and the weak became dangerous. And the thread he found running through every downfall, in every era, across every culture, was the same. The mouth. Uncontrolled. Unguarded. Devastating. In the next few minutes, you will face 10 specific situations, not theoretical, not rare, but daily occurrences happening in your life right now, where your own mouth sets the trap and steps into it on your behalf. If you are ready to stop sabotaging yourself with your own voice, drop this affirmation in the comments right now. I am the gatekeeper of my own words. Situation 1, the anger leak. Anger is not power. Anger is a door thrown wide open. And the moment that door swings, everything you have spent months and years protecting walks directly out into the hands of anyone present and paying attention. When genuine fury takes control of you, something critical shuts down inside your mind. The filtering mechanism, that careful, vigilant part of you that knows what to say and what to bury, goes offline. What replaces it is raw, unprocessed truth. Every grievance you have quietly endured surfaces. Every resentment you constructed a wall around comes pouring through the cracks. Every dark thought, every suppressed frustration, every privately held assessment of the person standing across from you, it all erupts simultaneously and without your permission. This is not catharsis. This is intelligence leakage. The person who provoked your explosion is not being confronted, they are being briefed. They are learning, in one emotionally unguarded moment, more about your internal world than months of careful observation could have revealed. They discover what you truly think of them. They learn which injustices have been quietly accumulating. They identify the specific wounds that, when pressed, cause you to lose all composure. They find the remote control for your behavior. And here is the part that haunts people long after the anger fades. The person who triggered your explosion rarely remains as disturbed by it as you do. You walk away feeling justified, righteous even, in your outburst. They walk away with a detailed map of your vulnerabilities, your emotional architecture, and the exact locations of every button worth pressing the next time they need you reactive, distracted, or discredited. Think about what becomes possible for someone who knows precisely what makes you explode. They can provoke you in a meeting room full of witnesses and watch your credibility dissolve in real time. They can introduce a specific topic in front of the exact people whose opinion of you matters most. They can manufacture a scenario in which your anger makes you look like the problem, and all they have to do is wait for your own mouth to do the rest. Machiavelli understood that a man who cannot master himself cannot hope to master anything beyond himself. Rage is not power dressed in fire, it is weakness wearing the uniform of conviction. The genuinely powerful feel anger with the same intensity you do. They experience the same heat, the same impulse to unleash. But they have built the internal architecture to contain it, redirect it, and deploy it strategically rather than reactively. They process fury in private and return to every public arena composed, calibrated, and unmoved by the very provocations that were designed to destabilize them. Your anger is not justice. It is not proof that you are right. It is a gift you are handing to your enemies wrapped in your own hands. The most dangerous opponents you will ever face are not the ones who rage back at you, they are the ones who smile, absorb your explosion, and file everything you just told them for future use. Learn to feel the heat without becoming the fire. Let the emotion arrive, acknowledge it internally, and respond only once you have returned to your most strategic self. Because in the game of power and influence, the person who can remain composed while everyone else reaches for their feelings will always hold the higher ground. Drop this affirmation in the comments: stillness is my armor. Situation 2. The Triumph Broadcast. Victory produces a hunger that is almost impossible to resist. When you win, when the strategy works, when the effort pays off, when the result arrives and it is everything you work toward. Your ego does not want to simply experience the triumph privately. It wants witnesses. It wants recognition. It needs other people to understand not just that you won, but how cleverly you won. And so the mouth opens, and the account begins. You walk people through the thinking. You explain the moves you made and why. You describe the moment you saw the opening others missed. You offer the behind-the-scenes narrative of your strategy because the outcome alone does not feel sufficient. You need the process honored too. This impulse is entirely human. It is also among the most reliable ways to dismantle the advantage you just earned. Every explanation you offer about your success is a free tutorial for your competitors. Every detail you reveal about your methodology is a blueprint they can study, adapt, and use against you. Every layer of your strategy you expose for the sake of appreciation becomes material in the hands of the next person who intends to outmaneuver you. You work to build an advantage. Then you voluntarily delivered a manual for overcoming it. Consider who is in the room when you broadcast your victories. Not everyone celebrating your success is doing so with pure intentions. Some are applauding your outcome while quietly cataloging your methods. Some are asking enthusiastic questions not because they admire you but because they need to understand you well enough to compete with you. Some are laughing at your story while taking mental notes on exactly where your thinking is predictable, where your process has gaps, and where the next person to challenge you should aim. The most enduring winners in every domain of human endeavor share a common characteristic: they celebrate internally and present only results externally. They do not explain their genius, they demonstrate it through outcomes, then protect the method behind a wall of composure and controlled silence. The mystique surrounding how they operate is not accidental. It is deliberate. Because mystery multiplies power in a way that explanation never can. Machiavelli observed that the ruler who makes himself transparent makes himself predictable, and the predictable ruler makes himself vulnerable. Let your results speak with volume. Let your method stay quiet. The less people understand about how you operate, the larger the space they must fill with respect, caution, and the uncomfortable awareness that they do not fully understand what they are dealing with. Drop this affirmation: my silence protects my edge. Situation 3. The Loosened Tongue. There is an ancient method of extraction that requires no force, no threats, and no coercion. It requires only comfort, warmth, the right atmosphere, and something in a glass. It is one of the oldest and most effective intelligence-gathering techniques in human history, and it is performed on you regularly by people you would never suspect. When inhibitions soften, the mouth does not simply open wider, it opens deeper. The internal security system that governs what you share with whom begins to malfunction. Layers of carefully maintained discretion dissolve. The things you have spent considerable energy keeping protected. Behind professionalism, behind social grace, behind the version of yourself you deliberately present, begin to surface unbidden. You think you are relaxing. You think you are connecting. You think you are finally being your authentic self. What you are actually doing is handing classified information to anyone in the room with the clarity of mind to receive it. Professional manipulators and strategic social actors understand this dynamic with precision. They engineer the environment. They create comfort deliberately. They select the venue, control the pacing, provide the drinks, and ask questions that sound innocent because they are designed to sound innocent. What is going on with your business lately? How are things really at home? What do you actually think about what happened last month? These are not idle questions. They are prompts, delivered at the moment your defenses are lowest, by someone who will remember every answer with perfect sobriety tomorrow morning. The mathematics of this situation are stark. They collect. You reveal. They remember. You forget. The imbalance compounds over time. What you confessed about your relationship becomes leverage in a negotiation. What you admitted about your professional struggles becomes intelligence that shifts how you are perceived and treated. What you shared about your private fears becomes the exact map used to navigate pressure points when it matters to someone else. Image 6 prompt. A solitary man sitting at a dimly lit stone table, head bowed in mourning regret, an empty goblet tipped on its side, amber dawn light streaming through a narrow arched window, paper scattered across the table with handwritten notes representing what was overheard, the figure dressed in disheveled burgundy shirt, deep shadows in teal and indigo pooling around his feet, a shadowy figure exiting through a doorway in the background carrying a scroll of secrets. Painted in epic fantasy realism, romantic realism style, high contrast chiaroscuro lighting, cinematic painted quality, dramatic composition, mythological mood, concept art aesthetic. Machiavelli warned that the man who cannot govern his own impulses will always be governed by those who can. In an era where every social gathering can be quietly recorded, where memory is reinforced by notes taken immediately afterward, where the relaxed confession of a Thursday evening can surface as evidence in a Monday morning conversation, your clarity of mind is not a social liability, it is your most powerful strategic asset. The person who remains fully present while everyone else softens their guard holds an extraordinary intelligence advantage. They collect what you give away. They remember what you forget. And the distance between those two positions compounds into power over time. Drop this affirmation: clarity is my shield. Situation 4: the pressure confession. Every human being has a breaking point. Stress, sustained long enough and applied with enough pressure, strips away the performance entirely. The version of yourself you have carefully constructed for the world, competent, composed, in control, begins to crack. And what comes through those cracks is unedited, unmanaged, and extraordinarily revealing to anyone positioned to observe it. When the weight becomes unbearable, the survival instinct in you reaches for relief. It reaches for the nearest person who seems safe, and it begins to speak. You find yourself admitting that you are struggling in ways you have not admitted to anyone. You confess that you do not have the answers you have been performing confidence about. You reveal the gap between your public presentation and your private reality. And while this discharge of pressure provides immediate physical relief, it creates something far more dangerous, a detailed psychological profile in the hands of whoever is listening. The people most likely to hear your stress confessions are also the people closest to you: colleagues, family members, friends, partners. These are not always safe audiences. The colleague who heard you admit you are overwhelmed will factor that into how they position themselves relative to you in the next internal competition. The family member who absorbed your professional insecurities will carry that assessment of your capabilities into every future conversation about your choices. The friend who learned where you are most fragile holds an address they may not intend to visit, but could, under the right circumstances, find themselves directing others toward. There is an even more dangerous version of this dynamic. Some people do not wait for pressure to naturally produce confession. They apply it deliberately. They manufacture stress, create urgency, introduce anxiety, not out of malice necessarily, but because pressure reliably opens people up in ways that nothing else can. They have learned, through experience, that the fastest way to understand someone is to squeeze them gently and listen carefully to what comes out. Machiavelli observed that the strength of a man is measured not in what he achieves under ideal conditions, but in what he maintains under impossible ones. Pressure is not your enemy, your unguarded response to pressure is. The discipline of holding your composure when every instinct tells you to reach for relief and release, that discipline is not just a virtue. It is a strategic capability that separates those who control their environment from those who become a resource within someone else's. Drop this affirmation: pressure reveals my discipline. Situation 5: the intimacy overshare. Closeness produces a particular species of danger that people almost never see coming, because it arrives wearing the face of love, friendship, and genuine human connection. When you feel deeply aligned with another person, when the chemistry is real and the trust feels earned, your instinct is to honor that connection by demonstrating it through complete honesty. You share the parts of yourself you share with no one else. You offer the interior rooms of your life. You speak the unspeakable things, the private fears, the ancient shames, the secret desires. This feels not like vulnerability but like the purest expression of intimacy. It feels like trust made visible. But here is what that moment does not include in its warmth and certainty: a guarantee about the future. Relationships shift. People change. Circumstances create pressures that alter loyalties in ways neither person anticipated when everything was good. The partner who held your confessions as something sacred may eventually become an adversary in a legal proceeding. The friend who absorbed your deepest insecurities may eventually be sitting across from your mutual contacts, describing you to them. The colleague who knew your private struggles may one day be competing against you for the same position. The most painful truth about intimate disclosures is not that people are malicious. Most are not. The truth is that people are complicated, circumstances are unpredictable, and the information you shared in tenderness does not expire when the tenderness does. It remains. It retains its original form. And in new circumstances, with new pressures, in new configurations of loyalty and self-interest, that information becomes available again, not necessarily as a weapon, but potentially as one. Machiavelli noted that men forget the death of their fathers far sooner than they forget the loss of their inheritance. People remember where their self-interest intersects with what they know about you, long after the emotional context that produced the knowledge has dissolved. You cannot control what happens to a relationship. You can control what survives its ending. Share your depth with the smallest possible circle, and even within that circle, share only what you could survive hearing repeated at the worst possible moment by the most dangerous possible person. This is not coldness. This is wisdom. Drop this affirmation: I am selective with my depth. Situation 6, the public loyalty declaration. Loyalty is not the problem. The public declaration of it is. When you announce your allegiance loudly, to a person, an ideology, a faction in a professional or social conflict, you accomplish something that feels powerful but functions as a trap. You feel decisive. You feel solid. You feel like someone who knows where they stand. But what you have actually done is hand everyone watching a fixed point from which they can predict your behavior, limit your options, and maneuver around you with full knowledge of where you cannot go. Public loyalty declarations close doors. They signal every opposing force exactly where to find you and exactly what you stand to lose. They eliminate the strategic ambiguity that is often the most valuable resource in any complex human environment. The person who has clearly, vocally committed to one side of a conflict is no longer a wild card, they are a known quantity. And known quantities are managed, not feared. They are accounted for in the plans of others rather than accounting for themselves. There is another dimension to this that goes deeper. The loudest declarations of loyalty are frequently made by people who feel most uncertain about it. When genuine, settled loyalty exists, it rarely requires announcement. It is simply visible in behavior over time. But when someone is working through internal ambivalence, the public declaration serves a psychological function. It creates external accountability to compensate for internal doubt. The problem is that this very loudness signals the doubt to perceptive observers. They see not conviction, but performance. And performers are understood to be playing a role that could change. Your allegiances should be demonstrated through consistent, strategic action over time, visible to those who matter, quiet to those who do not. True influence is built not by declaring which team you play for, but by being the person every team is attempting to recruit. The moment you loudly plant your flag, you become the first name mentioned when accountability is distributed if that side falls. Machiavelli wrote that the man who depends entirely on fortune will be ruined when fortune shifts. Loud loyalty is a bet placed entirely on a fortune not your own. Drop this affirmation: actions carry what words only promise. Situation 7, the defensive explanation. When someone challenges you, when criticism lands, when an accusation is made, when your reputation or character is questioned, something ancient inside you demands an immediate response. Every cell in your system fires toward defense. Your identity fee. LS under siege, and the instinct is overwhelming. Correct the record, provide the context, restore the image, make them understand why they are wrong about you. But the moment you begin to explain yourself at length, you hand your challenger something they may not even have been certain they had: your complete attention, your emotional investment, and a detailed map of exactly which parts of their challenge landed. Because you do not mount elaborate defenses against allegations that did not concern you. You do not over-explain in response to accusations that failed to find their mark. The ferocity and length of your defense is a precise indicator of where the truth they pointed at actually lives inside you. There is a further consequence. Every extensive justification you offer teaches the people observing the exchange that your self-perception depends on their endorsement. It demonstrates that their opinion of you carries enough weight to redirect your behavior, which means it carries enough weight to control your behavior if someone learns to manage their opinion strategically. Once that is understood, you have handed someone a leash made entirely of your own need to be seen correctly. The most powerful response to criticism that does not deserve a response is no response. And criticism that does deserve engagement should receive precision, not volume. A single composed sentence that addresses the substance and nothing more communicates what no elaborate defense can: that your sense of self is not subject to adjustment based on what others choose to say about it. Machiavelli understood that a ruler who must justify every decision trains his court to demand justification for all of them, and eventually, to withhold approval until justification is supplied. This is precisely the dynamic you create when you defend yourself compulsively. You train the room to think of your reputation as something negotiated through explanation rather than earned through demonstration. Composure is not weakness. It is a declaration that your identity does not require external verification to remain intact. Your work answers every question your mouth should leave unspoken. Drop this affirmation: my work answers what my mouth does not. Situation 8. The betrayal broadcast. When a relationship ends in betrayal, you find yourself in possession of an inventory you never asked to carry. You know things about this person, their fears, their private failures, their secrets shared in moments of trust, the contradictions between who they present to the world and who they actually are in private. And the damage they have caused you makes the temptation to deploy that inventory feel less like revenge and more like simple justice. They hurt you. You hold the information to hurt them back. The equation seems clean. But the moment you begin broadcasting what you know, the story is no longer about what they did to you. It becomes about who you are and what you do with private information when you are wounded. Every person who hears your revelations is not processing the content, they are processing the act. They are observing that you possess the capability and willingness to weaponize confidences when hurt. And that observation travels far faster and far further than any specific detail you revealed. Future partners hear this story and recalibrate what they will share with you. Future employers encounter people who know about this situation and make quiet adjustments. Future allies factor it into how much they are willing to trust you with things that matter. You did not just expose one person, you published your operating terms for anyone who ever considers getting close to you. The terms now read, proximity creates risk. And people who read those terms adjust their proximity accordingly. There is also the target you intended. Consider carefully what broadcasting their secrets actually achieves. If they are already outside your life, public exposure rarely inflicts the damage you imagine. People have short memories for the private failings of those they have no ongoing relationship with. But the record of you as someone who exposes private information? That is permanent, searchable, and attaches to your name in perpetuity. Machiavelli taught that the truly strategic operator does not spend assets for emotional satisfaction, they preserve them as leverage for material advantage. The secrets you hold after a relationship ends are not ammunition to be fired immediately. They are currency. They retain value only as long as they remain unspent. Their existence, known to the other party, creates a quiet equilibrium that often serves you better than their exposure ever could. Silence is not defeat after betrayal. It is the construction of a fortress. Drop this affirmation: my discretion is my greatest currency. Situation 9. The competence performance. Insecurity has a sound that perceptive people recognize immediately. It speaks in vocabulary that is slightly more elaborate than the conversation requires. It name drops in contexts where names serve no informational purpose. It interrupts to demonstrate relevance before relevance has been questioned. It over-explains conclusions that did not require justification. It circles back to its own credentials and associations with a frequency that no one with genuine security would maintain. And every person in the room who knows what they are listening to hears not expertise. They hear the performance of expertise by someone who is not entirely certain they possess it. The mechanism driving this behavior is straightforward. When you are uncertain about your position, your standing, your competence, or how you are being perceived, your mouth volunteers to solve the problem your substance has not yet addressed. It offers verbal credentials as a substitute for demonstrated capability. It creates the impression through words of something that has not yet been established through results. And in doing so, it announces to every perceptive observer not just the uncertainty it was meant to conceal, but the specific nature and location of that uncertainty. True expertise is, without exception, remarkably quiet. The person who genuinely knows something deeply can discuss it in plain language without elaborate performance. They are comfortable with long pauses. They are unbothered by not having an immediate answer. They do not feel the need to establish their credentials before making a point, because their point speaks for itself. The difference between the person who knows and the person who performs knowing is immediately visible to anyone else who knows. There is an additional dimension to this that deepens the problem. When you perform competence desperately enough, you become predictable in the specific way that manipulators most appreciate. They learn exactly which allegations of inadequacy will cause you to overextend yourself. They discover which contexts activate your need to prove yourself, and they engineer those contexts when they want you off balance, overcommitted, or making decisions driven by ego rather than clear thinking. Your insecurity, when on display, is a control mechanism handed to everyone watching. Machiavelli noted that those who remind others of their power rarely have any left worth reminding anyone about. Build in private. Produce results that carry your name into rooms you have not entered. Let the work precede you. Let the reputation form on its own terms through demonstrated capability rather than through the exhausting performance of claimed capability. Composure about what you are is the only advertisement that convinces people who cannot be fooled. Drop this affirmation: my silence announces my confidence. Situation 10. The Promise Architecture. When you cannot solve the present problem with present capability, your mouth reaches for the future. It offers timelines. It commits to outcomes you are not yet certain you can deliver. It builds elaborate structures of promise in the space where actual solutions have not yet materialized. And in the immediate term, this works. The pressure eases. The expectation shifts forward. The person across from you relaxes because a future they want to believe in has been described to them in convincing detail. But the promise does not live only in that moment. It transfers immediately and permanently into the other person's accounting of you. It becomes a debt on your ledger, one that compounds with interest in the form of raised expectation, growing anticipation, and the slow erosion of trust that occurs as each day passes without the promised delivery materializing. You created a future they are now planning around. You built expectations they are now organizing their own decisions to accommodate. And when the future arrives without the thing you promised, the damage is not proportional to the original promise, it is amplified by everything they rearranged in anticipation of it. There is a deeper psychology at work here. Promise-making is not simply deception, it is frequently self-deception. In the moment of making a promise, many people genuinely believe they will fulfill it. The intention is real. The commitment feels solid. But intentions and capabilities are not the same thing, and the gap between what you intend to deliver and what your actual circumstances allow you to deliver becomes visible over time in a way that no amount of good intention can close. Every unfulfilled promise adds to a file that people maintain about your reliability. The first broken commitment produces doubt. The second confirms a pattern. By the third, the assessment is complete and largely immovable. This person's word is not a reliable unit of information. Once that conclusion forms, it affects everything: how much weight your future commitments carry, how much credibility your explanations receive, how much latitude others extend when your performance falls short. You are now operating with a currency that has lost its value. Machiavelli observed that foundations built on the goodwill of words alone collapse when tested by the weight of reality. The only architecture that holds is built from consistent demonstrated performance over time. Undercommit with precision. Overdeliver without announcement. Give people less in words and more in results than they anticipated. Build your reputation on the consistent experience of being surprised by what you produce rather than on the recurring disappointment of what you promised and failed to provide. A person whose word consistently exceeds their promise becomes someone whose word becomes genuinely valuable, a rare and powerful currency in a world drowning in hollow commitments. Drop this affirmation: I promise less and build more. The 10 situations you have just encountered are not ancient history. They are not cautionary tales from a world that no longer exists. They are events that will unfold in your week, in the office conversation that stretches into dangerous territory, in the dinner table confession that feels safe but is not, in the moment of pressure that cracks the composure you worked so hard to build, in the victory that feels too good not to explain, in the wound that feels too deep not to retaliate against. This is the territory of ordinary life. And in ordinary life, the mouth moves constantly, narrating, confessing, defending, performing, promising, proclaiming. Most people never step back far enough to hear what all that movement is actually communicating to the people around them. They are too close to the sound of their own voice to understand what it is revealing. What Machiavelli understood, what the great students of power across every civilization have understood, is that the space between the thought and the spoken word is not empty. It is the location where all genuine power lives. That pause, that moment of internal governance before the mouth engages, is where outcomes are shaped. Where reputations are protected. Where advantages are preserved. Where the difference between a strategic response and a reactive confession is made. Consider the world you are operating in. Everything is recorded. The offhand remark at a professional gathering is absorbed by ears attached to memories. The message sent in an emotional moment creates a permanent record that survives the emotion that produced it. The private conversation held in what feels like a protected space is being processed and sometimes repeated by a person who experiences the world through their own self-interest, not yours. The confession made in the middle of the night when vulnerability has its fullest grip on you will still exist in the other person's memory the next morning and the morning after that and years from now when circumstances have shifted entirely. In this environment, verbal discipline is not paranoia. It is not coldness. It is not the behavior of someone who cannot connect or cannot be trusted. It is the most sophisticated form of self-respect available to a person who has decided to take seriously what they are building and what they intend to protect. It is the recognition that you are in a game, one played constantly, whether or not you are conscious of the rules, and that your words are your most frequently deployed pieces on that board. The people who shape their world, who build things that last, who maintain influence across years and decades, who emerge from crises with their reputation not just intact but enhanced, are not the most gifted or the most well-resourced. They are the most intentional about how they speak. They have internalized one governing principle: every word is either building something or dismantling it. There is no neutral ground. Every sentence either advances your position or retreats from it. Every silence either protects something or surrenders it. Machiavelli devoted his life to studying what separates those who govern their world from those who become part of someone else's governance. His conclusion, stripped of all the historical and political complexity, is simple and devastating: the governors speak when speech serves their purpose and are silent when silence serves it better. The governed are simply reacting to their emotions, to their insecurities, to their need for connection, to their hunger for recognition, and handing the keys of their fate to whoever happens to be listening. The mouth that betrays you is not broken. It is simply untrained. It operates by instinct rather than intention. It responds to feeling rather than to strategy. And the work, the deeply rewarding, genuinely transformative work, is to train it. To build the pause. To cultivate the habit of choosing rather than reacting. To understand that in a world full of people who speak their every thought and feeling the moment it forms, the person who speaks only when their words will build something stands in an entirely different category. Your future is not determined by your intelligence, your circumstances, or your connections. It is determined moment by moment, conversation by conversation, word by word. Every sentence you choose not to say protects something. Every word you speak with full intention builds something. And every time you feel the impulse to leak, broadcast, confess, perform, retaliate, or promise, and you pause, choose, and respond strategically instead, you are doing what Machiavelli understood the truly powerful to do above all else: you are governing yourself. If what you have encountered in this video has illuminated a pattern in your own life, a conversation you regret, a habit you recognize, a situation where your own mouth cost you something real, then you already possess the most important prerequisite for change: awareness. The trap cannot catch you if you can see it. Subscribe now for more insights into the ancient psychology of power, influence, and self-mastery, because the most important battles you will ever fight are not with other people. They are with the version of yourself that speaks before it thinks. Your words will build your empire or become the tools used to dismantle it. The mouth that governs itself is the only one that governs anything else.